searching. Then, bago natin malalaman or before we know that it is a fact, we must do some fact checking. So, I have some example here. As you can see, this post about the Ukraine and Russia. No, marami naman sa atin na parang naniwala na dun sa post na totoo, ngunit totoo ba talaga o hindi? Kaya nung nag-fact check or some researchers do fact checking, na nalaman nila na this post is fake. Siguro ito yung katotohanan. Siguro nga the picture that posted is true, but if we relate this on the current situation, it is not true. Kumbaga, totoo yung picture na nakikita natin na yung president ng Ukraine ay andon at nakasuot ng uniforme ng sundalo. Ngunit hindi ito applicable sa pangyayari natin ngayon. Kaya hindi tayo agad-agad maniniwala na totoo o hindi. Kasi kailangan pa din natin ng fact checking. So next is opinion. These are statements that convey beliefs, feelings, judgments, attitudes, and preference. Unlike facts, opinion cannot be verified because these are based on one's perception. Ayun nga, gaya na sabi ko, fact. Ayun yung may proof tayo, may evidence tayo na talagang totoo. Itong opinion kasi, ano lang natin to perception lang natin, opinion lang natin, gaya ng pagsabi natin ng I think, hindi naman natin sure or we have no assurance that this kind of thing is true or not. Kaya na lang pag sinabi ng iba na pogi ka, pero hindi ka naman agad-agad naniniwala kasi hindi naman totoo kasi opinion lang naman yun. So next reporter please.
Would that be all for the fact and opinion, Clyde?
Meron pa po, sir. My next reporter.
Okay, please stop screen sharing so that others can screen share. Okay, so who's next after Clyde? All right.
Ako po, sir. Makita po?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is our second part of the report, types of facts. So there are two types of facts. First, the empirical fact and the conceptual facts. So what is empirical facts? These are the things that we can assert about the world based on direct, straightforward observation evidence. These are the most straightforward kinds of facts are things that we see happening. For example, we watch someone drop an apple and assert the apple fell to the ground. What is conceptual facts? These are the things that we assert about the world based on strongly held philosophical views that we have about the kind of world in which we live. Most scientific facts are a combination of observations and other beliefs we have about the world. For example, even the idea that the natural world is governed by laws is not something that we can immediately perceive. It has not been universally believed by all rational observers. So the distinction between the two, it is not always possible to clearly distinguish between empirical and conceptual facts. Indeed, most beliefs are based on a mixture of observational evidence and general ideas about the world. In between these types of facts is a broad spectrum of activity, measuring with various instruments, mathematical modeling, and etc. Scientific activity has to begin with some claims about the evidential basis. the facts of the matter. Establishing these facts is a process that takes place in social, political, and intellectual contexts. Empirical and conceptual facts can also be applied in research. The main difference between conceptual and empirical research is that conceptual research involves abstract ideas and concepts, whereas empirical research involves research based on observation, experiments, and verifiable evidence. That's all. Thank you.
So, ay, makita na po, sir.
Yes.
So, good evening, everyone. I'm Angel ng Cowboy, and I'm the next reporter. So, what is opinion? An opinion is a judgment, viewpoint, or statement. It is not conclusive rather than facts, which are true statements. So, opinion. Ang opinion is imong sariling pananaw or viewpoint sa isa kabutan or certain topics. So, next, what are the three types of opinion? The three types of opinion are public opinion, group opinion, and scientific opinion. So, public opinion is collective opinion on a specific topic or voting intention relevant to a society. So, ang public opinion is mo ni siyang opinion sa random person sa kaning nga topic. For example, sa election karon sa ang nay different opinion ang mga tao sa kaning nga na modagan nga pagka-presidente as ang isa pud tao pud sa ingani nga presidente. So next is group opinion. Group opinion refers to a aggregation of opinions collected from a group of subjects such as members of a jury, legislator, committee, or other collective decision-making body. So, ang group opinion daw is bali opinion siya sa isa sa na tao pero bali i-compare nila for example sa mga sa mga nag-perform ang mga opinion sa mga judges sa line judges kay i-compare nila para makabuo sila sa topic yun kung kinsa kay ang dapat na madaog. So last is scientific opinion. Scientific opinion may reflect opinions on scientific concerns as articulated by one or more scientists, published in scholarly journals or books, both of which entail peer review and rigorous professional editing. So, ang scientific opinion is bali wait lang. Bali opinion nga nag-base sa information or scientific research. For example, ang opinion is an article is a mammal because he or it lays eggs. So, ito siya nga opinion kay na prove naman to siya na dili ang mammal. So, mga po ang scientific opinion. That's all. Ay, wait lang, di ko kablo mo hawa. Ay, kung saan paggawa sa answer sa present. Oh, thank you.
Okay, so meron pa ba for the fact and opinion?
Meron pa, sir.
Alright, sige.
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
Makitaan po ang screen. Hello?
Wala pa like I think you did not share the screen.
Okay. Wait lang po. Ito na po.
Sige, proceed lang, Laika.
Okay po. Sorry, sir. Okay. Okay, good evening. Am I audible? Hello?
Hinay kayo, Laika. Pero proceed lang. I think the problem is the signal of Laika. Meron pa bang iba dyan, Clyde? Baka we can proceed first to others.
Ako sir, example lang po sir.
O, sige, Giselle.
Ay sir, namali akong nasulod na kuan sir na account sa Zoom. Inulba sir, Vincent akong name. Vincent Inulba. Dali
Okay.
na sir.
Sige, sige, go.
Okay lang sir ha. Fact. Fact. A fact is based on observation and research. A fact is simply something that can be proven true. For example, wait lang sir ha. For example, your heart pumps blood through your body. The leaves of growing plants are usually green. India is the second largest country in the world. Spring is one of the 4 seasons. 5, summer is the season with the longest and warmest day of the year. 6, Manila is the capital city of the Philippines. 7, blue is my favorite color. And 8, the election will be on May. One example sa fact, sir. Opinion, a person belief or judgment that is not founded on proof or certainty. An opinion is what someone thinks. An opinion cannot be tested since it is always changing. For example, first, the Los Angeles Lakers are the best basketball team. Second, chess is a tough game unless you've learned some tricks. Third, chocolate ice cream is better when topped with whipped cream and sprinkles. Fourth, SpongeBob is funny cartoon. Fifth, Mom Giselle sounds agree. Sixth, I believe that the Pirates of the Caribbean has fantastic special effect. 7, Christmas is the best of the year. And last, I like playing games on the internet. And that's all, sir. Thank you.
All right. So, nandiyan na ba si Laika? Meron pa bang next after,
Si Laika na lang po, sir.
Laika na lang, no?
Yes,
Laika, are
sir.
you okay?
Sorry po.
I think, no, your internet connection is not that good.
Yes, sir.
So what you can do na lang siguro is have a recording of your report and then just send it to me na lang. Yan na lang siguro.
I-try lang po, sir, na i-share screen po
Sige daw.
isa po
And
na.
someone,
Okay.
share screen na lang.
Our first slide po, please. So let's continue. Determining fact and opinion. Opinion and sentences. Next slide po. Thank you. Okay, now this is what we need to remember. A fact is based on existing truth and evidences, while an opinion are purely claims. It tells about the feelings, views, beliefs, or attitude that makes own judgment or conclusion. A fact can be proven by objective data rather, or data, while opinions are roughly not. Next slide po. Now, here are the terminologies we can find in a fact, sentences, or opinion. Under facts, there are, next po, ay sa ano po, previous slide please. Previous. Sige pa po. Previous. Sige. Sige pa. Previous po. Katong sa una. Slide. Sa taas po. Sige pa. Sige pa po. Sa baba. Terminologies. Okay. There. Can you zoom the screen po para makita siya clearly? Thank you. Sige pa. There. Makita po ba sa tanan?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So under facts, there are research, studies, reports, the statistics. What is that? The last one? Eyewitnesses. Then under opinions, there are absolutes, comparisons, belief, think, and feel. Next slide po. Okay. Let me give to you the two example or simple examples here showed in the screen. So see the sentence number 1. Spiders are scary. Is it fact or opinion? Anyone from the class?
Opinion.
Sentence number 2.
Opinion.
Yes, good. Look for the sentence number 2. The heart pumps blood throughout the body. Is it fact or opinion?
Facts.
Fact. Very good. Thank you for cooperation. So that is correct, no? Opinion expresses subjectively, and facts are stressing information with existing proof or evidences. Next slide po. Now, let us proceed to the characteristic of fact and opinion. So under facts, they are verifiable or falsible, unquestionable, true, objective, unchangeable rather, and under opinions, not verifiable or falsible because it is an opinion, room for disagreement, belief, subjective, change with individual. Next slide po again. Thank you. Okay. So let's run through these guidelines. Number 1 is there evidence to back up the statement? This is something that could guide us to determining in determining fact or opinion. Is there evidence to back up the statement? Number 2, does the evidence back up the statement? Is the evidence authoritatively or verifiable or trustworthy? Is the source of the evidence qualified? Does the statement change depending on who says it? Asking the right question will help one avoid accepting one's opinion as a fact. Now, so this is important to consider, especially when we do our research. Hindi po kasi tayo pwedeng magbasta-basta lang kasi sa mga informations, right? Dapat galing talaga reliable source rather. And hindi pwedeng based on opinions lang. Kailangan mong patunayan, di ba? Parang sa love lang. Sa joke lang po. Okay. Next slide po, please. Okay, the last one though. So allow me to read and review to you these few things. Summary. Facts are based on objective or outside evidences that can be measured. Opinions are based on subjective or insight, feeling or judgment, and cannot be measured. Facts are they are no matter what anyone says about them. Opinions change depending on person's perspective or personal perspective. Fact can be trusted if the evidence backs up or backs them up. Then opinions cannot be trusted unless reliable evidence backs them up. Analyzing the nature of statements will enable one to distinguish or identify between fact and opinion and determine what can and cannot be trusted. That's all from mine. Next reporter, please. Thank you for listening.
Okay na
All
po.
right, thank you so much. John Clyde, meron pa ba? Wala na, no? Okay, questions from our audience. Do you have things that you want to be clarified with regards to facts and opinions? How to determine that one? I believe that's very clear. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so doon na may. Okay, so opinion to na ko. How about others? Okay. All right. So sige. Okay, so very clear naman in terms of how you determine the fact and also the opinion. So you have to be objective, no? Our thorough research are there. So in a research, diba, how will you be able to say though that there's a significant relationship between the two variables if you will not do a research on it, if there are no facts or there are no evidences of that. So statistics, those are things that you have to bear on your mind in terms of facts. So that means true. No, wala na ilaing, di na pwede i-debate. Non-debatable na siya. No? And that's fact. In terms of opinion, it's more of the insight, it's more of your feelings, it's more of your perception on things, no? Like a certain topic or an idea. So that's opinion. So it's more of your perception and your feeling. So that means that a beautiful person to you might be not a beautiful person to others. Okay? Diba? So that's very subjective. Okay, so that's how so there are guidelines, no, as being mentioned a while ago by Laika, no, in our reports, no, in order for you to determine the fact and opinion, so you can use those guidelines, no, for you to be able to know that if this kind of information is very factual or opinionated. Very important right now that we are in the advent of technology, that where there are a lot of information, but you have to scrutinize it. No, dili pwede na i-share lang dayon, no, without doing fact checking. Tama? So just like for example, no, a while ago John Clyde mentioned mentioned about the president of Ukraine, no, we're in the news. It's like giving, no, an appreciation to the president, no, of Ukraine, because he was able to have that attire, no, of a military, but that was not during the war, diba? So fact checking is very important. Okay, so that you would know, no, if that is the truth, no. Even in the social media, no, marami masyadong mga information. There are a lot of information na makita natin, no, in the social media, especially right now that it is election, no? Merong mga information with regards to this kind of president, another president, and you as a person, no? So dili pwede na kuan dayon, tuo dayon, no? Make sure that you research on it and try to judge if these are factual or this is just an opinionated. Okay? So, yon. Others would like to share something on that with regards to fact and opinion? or clarification. So I think that's very understandable. So let's proceed to the next set of reporters. They'll be talking about assessing evidences. So we're somehow very connected to the first report, the fact and opinion. So let's try to understand this one. Okay, proceed.
So, good evening. We are here to report about assessing pieces of evidence. This section requires you to demonstrate your ability to evaluate evidence and its relationship to the text's content and structure. Additionally, you are expected to judge the admissibility and relevance of evidence. This chapter will assist you in developing critical thinking skills when you study various literature. A variety of readings will be used to practice the skills taught in this course. So tonight we will be talking about evidence, admissibility, relevancy, and the four types of evidence, which is demonstrative, real, testimonial, and documentary evidence. So first is evidence. It is the means sanctioned by the law of ascertaining the truth respecting a matter of fact in a judicial proceeding. But to put it in layman's term, it can be seen as information that helps us prove or demonstrate truth or disprove something false. So this is very understandable, right? But let's have an example. So assume that you are about to have your final examination. Your teacher is about to distribute the questionnaire, but he needs to verify first that you have paid your tuition. As you are probably aware, the school's policy is no permit, no exam. So what is the most effective technique to demonstrate to your teacher that you have paid your tuition fee already? You must provide your school cashier's examination permit, which certifies that your payment is valid for the initial examination. So allow me to provide you with the simplest definition of evidence. In general, something, whether information or something physical like a thing, aids a person in determining the truth. As with your school ID, it verifies that you are a student at the University of Mindanao. Simply ensure that it has the most recent validation sticker. And also put in mind that the presence of proof does not stop someone from being deceived or misled. This is where your knowledge of admissibility and relevancy principles will assist you in evaluating the type of evidence offered. So admissibility will be discussed by the next reporter. Thank you.
Admissibility of evidence refers to whether or not the law allows the evidence, or to say it in another way, and the law does not exclude the evidence. Admissible evidence is any document, testimony, or tangible physical item, such as a murder weapon, that can be used to prove a fact at issue in a hearing or trial in a court of law under the rules of evidence. For evidence to be admissible, two elements must concur, namely, the evidence is relevant and the rules do not exclude the evidence. Evidence is admissible when it is relevant to the issue and is not excluded by the law or the rules of court. So basically, if the evidence is to be admitted, it must be relevant and competent. So to be considered relevant, it must have some reasonable tendency to help prove or disprove some fact. It need not make the fact certain, but at least it must tend to increase or decrease the likelihood of some fact. Evidence is considered competent if it complies with certain traditional notions of reliability. Courts are gradually diminishing the competency rules of evidence by making them issues related to the weight of evidence. So if evidence is admissible, it is then allowed in a court of law. So for example, in a prosecution for homicide, The witness swears that the accused killed the victim because his ever-truthful boyhood friend told him so. The testimony, although relevant, is not admissible because the witness was not testifying based on his knowledge of the event. The testimony is hearsay, and this type of evidence is, as a rule, excluded by the rules. In short, the testimony offered is relevant but incompetent. Because hearsay is information that is gathered secondhand, it is considered unreliable and thus inadmissible in court. Because hearsay is information that is gathered secondhand, it is considered unreliable and thus inadmissible in court. The trial judge must ensure that unreliable testimonies are excluded from the case. In a prosecution for homicide, the wife of the accused testified that the husband admitted to her in confidence that it was he who killed their neighbor. Suppose the testimony is offered as evidence against the husband and is objected by the latter. In that case, the testimonial evidence will be admissible under a particular provision of the rules of court, which exclude it as a species of evidence notwithstanding its obvious relevance to the issue of guilt. The testimony is incompetent due to the fact that spousal testimonial privilege precludes one spouse from testifying against the other spouse in criminal or related proceedings. In other words, neither spouse can testify for or against the other. In a civil case for the collection of a sum of money, the testimony of an eyewitness to the transaction between the creditor and the debtor is competent evidence because the witness will be testifying based on his knowledge. However, if the subject of the testimony includes the alleged frequent bouts of dizziness of the debtor, that portion of the testimony is made inadmissible by the fact that the matters testified to are irrelevant to the issue of whether or not a debt exists. However, if the subject of the testimony includes the alleged frequent bouts of dizziness of the debtor, that portion of the testimony is made inadmissible by the fact that the matters testified to are irrelevant to the issue of whether or not the debt exists. So in this case, the testimony becomes irrelevant because there is no connection between the dizziness of the debtor and the debt per se. If a defense witness testifies having actually seen the alleged victim fire a gun first at the accused without the latter's provocation, the testimony of the eyewitness is competent and the matters testified to are irrelevant to the plea of self-defense. The testimony is thus admissible. It is not only relevant but competent as well. So this is actually a good testimony in favor of self-defense.
Now that you heard the info of admissibility of evidence, there is a part of the case that is something missing to comply with it. That is the relevancy. Refers that evidence must have such a relation to the fact in issue as to induce belief in its existence or non-existence. Example: Ruby Ridge is charged with stealing costume makeup from a drugstore that night before Halloween. The prosecution wants to offer evidence that Ruby's mom had refused to buy her a Halloween costume. The evidence is relevant to prove that Ruby had a motive for stealing the makeup. Number 2. Same case. The prosecution also wants to call the drugstore manager to testify that the makeup department suffers more thefts than any other department of the drugstore. This testimony will be irrelevant because it does not relate specifically to Ruby. Number 3. Lance Salop is charged with drunk driving. The prosecution wants to offer evidence that Lance is a member of a violent street gang. The evidence is irrelevant because the crime charge has nothing to do with gang activities. The evidence would only serve to stir up bias against Lance. Number 4. clairvoyant is charged with car theft. She was arrested in her home, and the prosecution wants to offer evidence that the arresting officer found marijuana and an unregistered handgun there. Unless the prosecution can establish that the gun and drugs were somehow involved in the theft, there's nothing to connect them with the crime. Again, the evidence would do almost nothing other than predisposing the judge or jury against the defendant.
Are you done? Okay na?
Sir, madungog ko, sir. Hello?
Oh, okay, okay na mo, Pat? Okay, sige, proceed. I think the video is stopped. What's the problem? Wala ba rin siya naka-share sound? Pag-click mo sa share screen, i-check mo ng share sound. Para masking naka-off imong mic, madunggan gihapon.
Hello, sir. Madungog ko, sir.
Yes.
Drunk driving.
Ay, lang, pen. Ako na lang mo share screen. Di na tika kailangan kan. Salamat. Sorry. Pakita, sir.
Yes.
Ay. Wala mo gato na ano, sir, na record na ang diri na part kay wala nag-reply akong mga kauban. So, there are 4 types of evidence recognized by other courts include demonstrative, real, testimonial, and documentary. So, first example type is demonstrative. Demonstrative is evidence that is corroborated a witness's testimony. This is frequently accomplished through the use of diagrams, maps, animations, and other similar techniques. Number two is real evidence. It is defined as anything that was present or used during the presentation of the case in court. Genuine evidence may include blood-stained clothing, a wrecked vehicle, a gun, a knife, and money marked with anti-theft coloring, and among other things. Mali lang number. Third is testimonial. The court views testimonial evidence as the simplest sort of evidence. It does not require any additional proof or substantiate or legitimize it. Typically, testimonial evidence is any statement made throughout the course of the trial by a witness or another individual. So, one of the most often used sorts of evidence is testimonial evidence. This type of evidence consists of statement made in court by the witnesses and submitted as proof of the matter asserted or addressed. Last is documentary. This evidence frequently regarded as genuine evidence. It is any form of evidence that assists in documenting the subject of trial. For instance, if the trial concerns a violation of contract, the documentary evidence